Welcome back. It is 2:18 here. Judge on Trial is the name of our special coverage of the trial of Judge Hannah Dugan this week at the federal courthouse in downtown Milwaukee, something that has received national attention ever since her arrest back in April of this year. And this is the beauty of what we can do here on the Wisconsin Live Desk with our streaming coverage of this trial, bringing you analysts who are able to give us such great perspective, like Jim Santel, the former U.S. Attorney for the Eastern District of Wisconsin, so familiar with cases like this, that actual courthouse itself, and our Fox 6 anchor, Ted Perry, who has been listening to this, let's just say, noteworthy testimony already of yet another judge involved here. That would be Judge Cervera, who is on the stand testifying, in a sense, against her colleague right now, Judge Hannah Dugan. So we have Jim standing by. Appreciate all the time you've been giving us the last couple days here. Ted, we wanted to start with you, though, and get a little bit of for our viewers here, we're relaying a document that our Bill Miston is updating from inside of that courtroom. You've actually been listening, viewing the testimony of Judge Cervera. So what has the tone been? What has this been like? Because at least for us reading this document, it seems like this is some of the most important testimony we've seen so far from the government.
I don't know if the government has someone they consider to be their star witness, but right now she's the leader in the clubhouse because Judge Cervera is giving, look, I'm highlighting her emotions right here, everything she had said earlier. She used terms like embarrassed, irritated, abandoned, shocked, and I'll explain all that. But she was basically trying to distance herself from any plan that Judge Hannah Dugan may or may not have had. She felt embarrassed, first of all, to be summoned out of her courtroom. She thought something was amiss, that there was a real emergency afoot. She hesitated to walk outside. She started to take off her robe. Judge Dugan said, no, keep the robe on. Then she said she was uncomfortable when they got into the hallway. And when she was asked why by the government attorney, she said, it's just very unusual for a judge to be in the hallway unless it's for some ceremonial reason to have their robe on. She also mentions the tone that Judge Dugan took with these federal agents, and Cervera said she just wanted to try to tone things down, and I just wanted to get back to my courtroom. And later, when she found out that Judge Dugan had finished, or not finished, but started up her docket again, she said, I was irritated. I felt abandoned, like she got to get back to her docket, but I didn't get back to mine. And then when one attorney or one member of the staff came up and said, you're goated now, a reference to her being, the GOAT, the best ever, in reference to helping Eduardo Flores Ruiz get out. She didn't want any part of that. And when another attorney said that I know what you were trying to do, she said, I was shocked. I wasn't trying to do anything. Judges should not be helping defendants escape law enforcement. So those guys are just some of the highlights, but I'd really love to hear James's take on what a strong witness she appears to be already.
Absolutely, Ted, and I think you've captured it well. This is the judge, as I was telling Carl and Brian while you were in the courtroom consuming all this. This is a judge who I hear, even as you're recounting the things that she is saying, she is very balanced. She is one of these folks who will listen to everybody and then make a determination. And this is not a judge who is afraid to make those tough calls, but she also doesn't want to be the focus of things. And what I think we're hearing from her even right now in real time is just absolutely beside herself that she was drawn into this, pulled out of her courtroom, as you just said, Ted, and then even by people in the hallway suggesting that she is a part of this attempt to try to divert what the agents were doing, and expressing not only her own personal dismay, but also, and this is the other thing that's got to land with the jury, and that's why the prosecution, I think, is embracing her testimony so well, that a judge generally, regardless of who that is, whether it's Judge Cervera or Judge Ashley, who may be coming up sometime very soon, other judges do not get involved in these kinds of things. Everybody has their role, including the investigators, including those who make the agent arrest, those kinds of things. Make references to the assistant U.S. attorneys and the district attorneys who make decisions about this. If everybody stays in their lane and we all follow the rules, everything works. If we leave those lanes, again, this is my interpretation of what she's offering, to the jury, again, through the prosecution theory. If you leave those lanes, that's when confusion starts. And again, we heard yesterday and again this morning, the extent to which these officers felt confused, were not certain what was going on, felt kind of out there without clear direction. And I think Judge Cervera, by her balanced and focused testimony and her own discomfort, is affirming implicitly and indirectly the statements made by those 4 agents earlier today.
And one thing that we're paraphrasing here from
even
Bill
more to that
Miston,
point,
Ted, sorry to interrupt, but one of the quotes that I think we will be the big takeaway so far from today from Judge Cervera: judges should not be helping defendants evade arrest. Now, Jim, I wanted to ask you this because we're going, as we mentioned before break, cross-examination was beginning with Steve Biskupik handling the cross-examination of Judge Cervera. A couple of the things I'd be curious your response to so far that have come up in cross-examination. First of all, notably, let me mention this, that Judge Cervera says Judge Dugan never mentioned the stairway. And we know that stairway is so pivotal to this trial in general. And then an interesting back and forth here. Biskupik got Cervera to explain that she later Googled that ICE officer's name, and actually her sister, Judge Cervera's sister, is a lawyer, typically family cases, but also criminal. And Judge Cervera says that she texted her sister to tell her ICE was in the building, admitting that she wanted to warn her in case she had clients coming to the courthouse. What do you make of that? Again, not necessarily directly related to the actions of Judge Dugan, but speaking to the larger atmosphere and issues at the courthouse.
Right. Defense counsel, Steve included, any defense attorney in any case has an obligation to test the government, right? That's what this is all about, to compel the government appropriately to prove its case beyond a reasonable doubt. What you see there from Steve Biskupik in those 2 instances, and I'm sure there is more, he's looked through all the discovery, this notion that Judge Dugan never talked about the stairway. Why is that important? Well, the defense is going to say if she really meant to send the defendant in her case away and outside of the clutches, if you will, Mr. Eduardo Flores Ruiz, why wouldn't she then direct him down the stairway? She never mentions that. And that suggests that maybe she did not intend for him to get out from under. So it's a good little point, and I suspect we'll hear about it down the road. And then a little bit more pointedly, as you're reporting on this, Carl, we're talking about whether or not this very otherwise compelling and a good witness with a lot of credibility, if she herself was doing something much akin to what her colleague was doing in reaching out to her sister, and therefore normalizing this behavior. Again, a good defense attorney identifies those areas, and I'm sure Steve is not going after Judge Cervera with great ferocity. You don't want to do that. I'm sure he's being very respectful, but pointing out that you yourself, Judge Cervera, were concerned about arrests. That's also what Steve is saying. That's what my client was also concerned about. And you and she are closer than you might think in terms of your interpretation of what was happening that day. All that, again, for closing argument, but that's what Steve is doing very appropriately. That's what defense counsel should be doing, testing the limits and the bounds of the credibility of any witness, including a judge who brings to the stand an awful lot of credibility from the very start.
I know, Ted, we've still got you hanging on there. We've got a couple of minutes. We've got to take a break, but I want to ask you, with Judge Cervera being the sort of so far star witness, did you, I don't know in the feed you're seeing, if you just see the witness on the stand, if you're seeing the courtroom, but any sense of the attention? I mean, we talked about some of the testimony so far has been maybe a little drier. It was foundational. Now you've got this key witness. Did you notice attention changing? Did you notice people perking up and listening to this witness?
Not necessarily, because the people who are in that courtroom are really into it, whether you're an observer or part of either the prosecution or the defense. So the monitor that I'm watching on, just to be clear, has 4 camera shots, one of the judge, one of the witness, one of the general courtroom. I should say 3, not 4. And so you can see the people who are in attendance. That's a shot from almost what the judge is saying, right? And then you're seeing also a shot of the judge. There's always a camera on Judge Adelman, and then there's also a camera on the person who is in the witness stand testifying. And when it was Judge Cervera, I need to point out, you read the words and you can see the words. Bill Miston is doing an amazing job of getting every little minutia out there, what's happening. What these words don't express is the sense of real disappointment that Judge Cervera had, that she had almost felt like she had been used by the judge to be a prop in whatever was going on there, and she felt irritated and shocked. And she didn't just say those words, she omitted those words. Omitted, I guess is what I'm trying to say. Omitted it. You know what I'm trying to say. The words were quite effusive. The words were quite effusive coming from her, and that you really got a sense of her pain.
Well, the ability to see it, I wish we could. So your descriptions are so helpful because we are flying blind, and you, as I said yesterday, use the term you're Roxanning for us. You're putting it in our ear so we can share it with our viewers. But